Hello, I'm Mark Baer. Welcome to the Joe Cupcake Chronicles. Today, Sisyphus Rocks, the discreet charm of Bourgeois Joe, Part 2. In this episode, we talk about what it's like for poor Joe. Joe, who is yearning to express himself, yearning to create, yearning to get his voice outside of himself and into the greater world. And then there's this other world he knows about where people sing and dance and play music and can do these things and have these talents. And poor Joe, lonely-hearted as the hollow moon, if he could only get from one side over the wall and into this other place. And he has been repelled by this wall. He tries to bang on this wall. He tries to hop over this wall, and he can't get over this wall. But finally, Joe manages to get into the other place. Joe Cupcake gets to go to the south of France. It's nice to be in Nice with Henri Matisse. Henri Matisse in Nice is painting Lydia de la Stroika, known to the world as the Pink Nude. And Joe and Lydia have this flirtation, but Joe doesn't know what to make of Matisse. Lunch comes in, and here's these oysters and crabs and this fish, and it looks terrific. But Matisse, he's just painting this stuff. He puts this food, he arranges the food, he arranges the life, and he's painting the stuff, and then it's taken away, and he says, I never eat anything that I paint. Poor Joe, he's not going to get lunch. And then he's looking at Lydia, and the implication being that he does not partake of his models as well. Joe has his suspicions about this. And the Picasso always slept with his models. And Matisse, well, he's painting fish. Anyway, enjoy this episode. The almond trees were in bloom. The soft, silky buds conjured Ladies in Couture by Alexander McQueen. Their satin gowns shimmered pink, while their feet mired in the mud. A sweet, earthly paradise. We remember what we love. It all rushes back. Lips like bright cherries. Fleshy, ripe, trembling. And while her eyes flickered orange and gold, the severe blue sky above appeared almost violet. A day in spring. Said Matisse, there are always flowers for those who wish to see them. It was spring again, time for Joe to photograph his garden. Some days there was foreboding in the air. His dog, 17 now, wouldn't be around much longer. Together on the bed, asleep, their breathing intertwined, dog and man transformed into a single pure spirit. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. Meditate on emptiness. Silence, where everything important can be heard. Silver sparkle on a silver night, broken shapes, stirred tints, desire, disgrace, destruction, divination, strange fire in the temple, bubbles, fizz. The mystery is bottomless in that wild place where lovers dance to that wah-wah calamity called love. And David danced before the Lord with all his might. There was shouting and the sound of horns, and as the ark of the Lord came into the city, Michal, daughter of Saul, saw David leaping half-naked before slave girls, and she despised him. David and Michal. Something bad happened. Betrayal, fate, dad. Saul had slain his thousands, but David had slain his tens of thousands, and there were all those Phoenician foreskins. No wonder God stopped talking after Volume 1. In another time,
another place. One said to the other, "Let us get out of this as lovers. Let us wake embraced on a pile of cinders. Charred hearts, charred sky, no apologies. We are beyond apology, beyond words, past words long ago. Let us clutch tight and cry out and laugh. God, it is good to laugh, good to let go. You and I connected for an instant, never to speak of this. No, not in this lifetime. Skin to skin, soul to soul, shivers, tears, fear." Mirrors reflect mirrors. Metaphors inform metaphors. Chemical fragments from a chemical past. All a crazy rave, all about being in the groove, finger on the pulse, behind the beat, in the pocket, sure-footed. Feather light lit up bright. To decipher the cuneiform hieroglyph scratchings on the sanctuary walls, knowing in the oblique text was the future, and the future would be weird. Joe was feeling frisky. He shouted, "Are you with me? Are you itching the same itch I'm itching?" He wanted to do something beautiful, some gesture, some madcap ballet. Don't panic, breathe in, breathe out. Bop to bop. "'Tis wonderful, 'tis marvelous." The air rippled, and color came in bent lines, night blues, intoxicating reds, extreme blacks. A phosphorescent glow blazed on the coast road. Phosphorescence sparkled on neon waves. Above, a radiant electric moon. Brujo Joe, night tripper, sorcerer, magus, rides a carpet of intricate design. He was moving across America. The Big Sur, the Painted Desert, the Canyon Country, the Colorado River. Hot at midnight in Texas. Memphis Soul on the radio. Texas went on forever. Furtive stares in small-town diners. Los Cruces, New Mexico. Looking down, he saw his young self, a hitchhiker in the land of enchantment, riding a car without a floorboard, the asphalt under his feet. And in Indiana, on a dark, dark night, some Proustian involuntary memory flipped him into the past. He was with his first love, he 17, she 16. Under her prom dress, he felt smooth legs and he could smell her strawberry scent. And for the next 2 hours, she was more real than the flashing white lines on the road ahead. Cornfields in Iowa, the Kansas-Colorado border, a curtain of purple, and in the far distance at the end of the purple, the sun lit the panoramic prairie. The Ohio River Valley, low cloud mist, eerie dawn. Oh, Satchmo, oh, what a wonderful world. Let's get lost, Chet Baker. Pastures of Plenty, Woody Guthrie. Woody faded in and out, and Joe saw faces from a bygone era, and dreamed of some future America. Somewhere over the rainbow, where boundless optimism washed over the land. Joe wanted to riot with Pussy Riot and bring down the thug Putin. Joe wanted to mutiny, wanted his voice heard. Most of all, Joe was hoping that something positive would come from his years of cumulative effort. He'd reconciled that there would be no masterpiece, no lasting legacy, no tour de force, no choir to sing his praises when he passed on. Cupcake's would be a lost language. There would be no accolades, no great reward, no fame, no glory, no applause. Probably not even a perfunctory thank you. Still, he pressed on until he clinked on the tubing. Tink, tink, tink. But the sound he heard was twank. Clock in, punch out. Art workers on the job. We rock, we roll. Up the hill we go. But when Sisyphus Joe's alarm clock buzzed, he did not budge. He was pinned to his bed, the G-force too strong. Depression? He felt lackluster, but not sad. He just didn't see the point of rolling a rock up a hill, knowing even by some miracle, if he did reach the top, what did it matter? Joe was under no illusions. His hill was not very steep, and he had never climbed very high. But now that he was on strike, how was he going to spend his day? He could balance on top of his rock, striking an arabesque pose like a human sculpture. He could dance in his rock. He could paint his rock blue or green. He could write revolt, freedom, passion on his rock. Or he could be like Dr. J. He looks, he shoots, swish, three-pointer at the buzzer. He could stand on his rock like Scriabin, obsessing over his mystical chord, composed of the notes A, D sharp, G, C sharp, F sharp, and B, and conduct imaginary sounds like Prometheus getting his liver gnawed, orchestrated for woodwinds, 8 horns, 5 trumpets, strings, piano, and chorus. What Joe would probably do is climb on the rock to peer in his neighbor's window. Guilt set in. Gauguin, Cézanne, and Matisse dashed past, a rock in one hand, lunch bucket in the other, grumbling how Picasso was still up there from the night before. What would Sisyphus do without that rock? That rock was love. It wasn't a curse. It was a calling. It's your thing. Do what you want to do. I can't tell you who to sock it to. This is our duty. Without our duty, we are nothing. Or Joe could subscribe to a new metaphor. They are a dime a dozen. Joe knew joy always came after pain, and he did what he always did when the sparkle drained from life. He evoked beauty. A cloud, a peach, a blue plum, Belmondo in Breathless, Srinagar apples, a spider's web in frost, blackbirds in a yellow field, Leopold Bloom leaving 7 Eccles Street, off to the museum to stare discreetly at the creases between the buttocks of statues, Prince Hal jousting with Falstaff, Henry Miller wandering the streets of Paris, starving, happy, pregnant with book, Jake Barnes in Bill Gorton's fishing trip before Pamplona. The 3 little syllables, Lo-li-ta, light of my life, fire of my loins. Dorian Gray's pistachio-colored peridot, rose pink and wine yellow topazes. And Joe, remembering a cornflower blue sapphire, a pigeon blood red ruby, a blue-green Zambian emerald, and a golden-green savorite. He compiled a list, 10 beautiful things, the exercise of recognition being all important. He dreamed of snow, but there would be no snow. This was California, where the fog was thick and the day was gray. He watched crows harass a hawk. It looked like a Japanese ink wash painting, and he was overwhelmed with snapshots from a late afternoon a decade earlier. Monarch butterflies in his wildflower garden, and the turning leaves evoking the scent of onion grass and fresh pine needles. He saw clouds blow across the sky, their pattern echoed on the ground, and as they crossed the far pasture, the angled sunlight lit the field like gold was sprinkling down. Oh my love, oh my love, oh my love. A blush of wind, and the blossoms on the neighbor's pear tree whooshed in a fabulous yellow puff. Exactly how Joe wanted to transcend. A gust, and his soul would go flying. I could change those gray skies to blue if I had you. God is a verb, as breathing is a verb. When I believe it, I'll see it. Believing is seeing. age after age, to be nearer, my God, to thee. Perhaps when we speak of God, we are speaking of something else. And there appeared to Joe an angel of the Lord in a flame of fire. "Hey man, got anything to smoke?" They imbibed, and Joe asked, "What happens to the holes when the Swiss cheese is gone?" The voice answered, "The same thing that happens to the holes of donuts." Just as he suspected. All those years before he was born, a blank. Then he was here, and soon he would be gone, back to the void, just a bunch of dirty laundry left behind, and a half-finished paperback. Shake, 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 shaketh thy booty. So many beautiful ways to be. Pagan Joe, Earth Joe, Painted Face Joe, holy, 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 holy smoke, holy cow, holy moly. There was the shaking of timbrels and naked merriment, barefoot dancing and wine, and we're getting crazy and loving it, and inhabiting the spirit and feeling the earth spin as moonlight bathes on the calf of gold that we made when we all stripped down and melted our jewelry. Hey man, don't ask me. It was tribal and sexy and seemed a good idea at the time. Then a boot out of the sky stomps us like ants. It was pleasing. So what was Yahweh so pissed about? And what was Moses doing up there for 40 days? Probably chewing peyote buttons. We sure were, stumbling in the sand and getting it on in the shrubs. What are the just to us? Waving their rapiers, grinding their jaws. Yeah, you bunch of uptight, stiff-necked peckerheads. What makes you so superior? Lighten up. You don't need to kill everybody and spare the sermon. We thought the golden calf was beautiful. It didn't mean anything, just art, asked Damien Hirst. His calf sold for 10.3 million pounds. And sure, your law and stone had good points, and everything is permitted does not mean that nothing is forbidden, but grace and a few tokes wouldn't hurt you either. Wrathful dickhead, you big brute. Love is all. It takes all, it gives all. The infinite is in the finite of every instant. Thank you, Lord, for this ordinary day, and blessed is the miracle of no dire phone calls, no drunken idiot speeding through a red light to crash into my car, no unsavory drama with me at the core, no terrible mortification. Joe would have liked a personal God, like a personal trainer or an imaginary friend like Harvey, a God of one's own making who could concoct a mean pitcher of margaritas and give you that extra tickle to keep his erection firm and help find his keys he misplaced and give him an added boost to pedal his bike up the hill and keep stains off his tie when he ate linguine. Joe settled for a wordless God. No text, no ritual, no judgment, no eternity, but missed not having a deity to prostrate before. Joe, instead, worshipped his 52-inch big screen TV in HD with surround sound. His vacuum cleaner, what was it thinking? Or his toaster? Or the coffee maker? Espresso or cappuccino, both divine. The dishwasher versus the wash machine, like God battling Baer. The magic of off to on, and his blender pureed. Then his bathroom skylight vent motor crapped out. An E11 error appeared on his freezer monitor. Gods and machines, not perfect, always buy the extended warranty. Joe thought of himself as progressive and fair, but wasn't sure his sympathies extended beyond art and politics to actual people. That evening, as guests streamed into the gala event at the museum, he encountered homeless people outside not partaking of the high-minded social offering. One pierced young panhandler's cardboard sign read, "Save me from becoming a prostitute." Inside, all gleamed. Outside, two ragged unfortunates fight. The man has a bicycle that tows a wagon with his belongings. Her things are crammed into a supermarket cart. She says, "I haven't eaten in 2 days. I'm starving." She calls him an asshole. He says, "Fuck a duck, motherfuck. What did I do?" Some turf battle Joe couldn't help, only watch. There was no social agencies he could suggest, no twin $10 bills he was willing to part with. So he thought this was the least he could do, an observance, and yet he didn't give another thought to the homeless until days later. So haunted was he by the exhibition of underwater photography. The photograph that haunted him was of a school of gray silver fish. The photographer had got right into the fish faces, and each fish absolutely had a unique personality. But if the same fish was the catch of the day, one fish would taste like another. Joe considered reincarnation. What if he came back as a disease-ridden pig in a crowded pig farm? Or as a Tyson chicken? His steak had flavor, but did it have personality? Was he just meat? And how would he taste? He loved the old joke about two cannibals eating a clown. Hey, you taste something funny? Then Joe saw a TV show about eating bugs. How certain bugs were high in protein, low in fat. A diet of baked grasshoppers was the answer to many of the planet's woes. It made sense, but Joe knew he would never eat bugs, and it saddened him that he would not evolve with the species. Inside the module command center, Little Joe, the peanut, fixed on Big Joe outside. Yak, 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 yak. And if Big Joe hadn't been out much, he'd never shut up, indiscreet and inappropriate. Even listening with the sound off made Little Joe cringe. And when enough was enough, the peanut assembled the hydraulic arm and yanked the lug inside where he would cause less trouble. One does not leave the world when inside. One is fully in the world, albeit in a parallel reality. Joe related to being a mad scientist. The mad scientist does not think he is mad. He is busy. He wants to be left alone. He does not want to explain his actions to others, doesn't suffer fools, and can barely suffer his own personality. His reality is inside a tiny room, a lab. In his data, he talks with others on his frequency as mad as he, but to his neighbors, he is an enigma, and he tells his wife nothing. In Joe's lab, metaphysical experimentation was always taking place. Lead into gold, gold into copper, tens into fives, fives into ones, ones into pennies. He had a knack. He tottered and tootled and noodled and doodled to permeate everyday life with aesthetic consideration, and it took all his beakers, test tubes, burners, clampers, stoppers, goggles, gloves, and all the chemicals that went with to infuse heart-rending realism with a rib-tickling tone. Words were one thing. Truth was quite another. He needed hot pads for truth. It burns, it explodes, it hurts. Look, see, duck, cover. Truth comes out swinging and takes no prisoners. Truth is frequently ephemeral, barely believable, rarely straight, and mostly unwieldy, like a beach ball blob of blubbery goop. You can't hold it, it drips, it leaks, it stretches, it splats, spots, sprays, splashes, sticks on shoes, gums the carpet, stains the sheets, can require lawyers, set you free, or land you in jail. Truth is fascinating, interesting, is someone else. Oedipus, for example, and not you. Discretion is the better part of valor, and some truth has no need to be uttered to be transparent. Others would notice Joe's fly was down long before he would. Joe was mostly less surprised than more surprised. Seldom did he hear that his bank manager had run off to Honduras and was now a pool boy at the big hotel. Seldom did he hear that his barber had abandoned his clippers to take the helm of General Electric, that his neighbor decided to have a sex change after adopting twins from Korea. But Joe put in the hours, did his incantations, trusted the magic, and that magic never let him down. He had notebooks full of beginning sentences for novels never written. When Larry Locks met Betty Bagel, life was all cream cheese. Humpty Dumpty cracked, shattered, splattered. It was time to saddle up and ride south, good old Guat City. Human leg found in plastic bag in Zone 6. Joe piled through other notes. A Banksy quote. All artists are willing to suffer for their work, but why are so few prepared to learn to draw? Written on one, a sad, sweet color between melancholy and nostalgia. Next, Maris Cunningham, chants, dance, movements written on scraps of paper for the legs and the arms, the head, all different, picked at random. on another, and young Peter Rabbit was told, "Don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor." Nothing made sense, so Joe changed the order. For every hour of certainty, many hours of doubt. Cut to the south of France. It was nice to be in Nice with Henri Matisse. Joe and Henri cut paper with scissors while Matisse's assistant, the lovely Lydia Deltorskaya, pinned them on the wall. They wore dark glasses to protect them from the brightness of the paper, which Matisse ordered from a special supplier. "It is not enough to place colors, however beautiful, one beside the other," said the maestro. "Colors must also react on one another. Otherwise, you have cacophony." In the ocean-facing room, Matisse's birds chirped while goldfish circled in their bowl. There was a painting of a vermilion goldfish next to a small Cézanne bathers, a painting Matisse bought when he could ill afford it, and which he clung to when pressed to sell. Matisse was very proper, but underneath, Joe suspected he was a dodgy old dark horse. Picasso painted nudes, and they didn't even look like women when he was done. But he admitted he always slipped his models into bed. Something honest about that. Matisse only talked about the intense feeling pure color could convey, but hanging everywhere was candy-colored flesh Joe wanted to lick. Lydia gave Joe a wink, and he knew he was not the first visitor to Matisse's studio to speculate about the role of this enigmatic Siberian ice princess. Model for the pink nude. A portrait of a reclining Lydia surrounded by a chair and a vase of flowers, which Matisse flattened and abstracted, creating a geometric pattern in the background against which she is presented as a series of curves. "Shrimp pink," Joe recalled fondly, as a lunch tray was wheeled in, or at least Joe thought it was lunch. On the platter were creamy white turbos, iron gray dogfish, steel blue gray mullet, skate, 1 lobster, 2 oysters, 1 long blue mackerel. Joe's mouth watered till he realized there would be no breaking out of the oyster crackers. "I've never sampled anything edible that served me as a model," scolded Matisse, who swaddled his oysters in the best light but did not eat his oysters. The babes, he claimed he never enjoyed them either, but to Joe it sounded like a ruse. "I have worked for 50 years and never been bored," went on Matisse. "Work cures everything." Joe thought, nice work if you can get it, and giggled with Lydia, thinking easy pink, kissy pink, slightly pink, and watched a languid balloon float off into a pinkish-orange sky over the Mediterranean.